Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I'm Jason, here with our co-host Scott Michael Childers.
Hello.
Hello, Scott. So last time we talked about attending writing conferences. This time we're going to talk about being on the other side of the table and what it's like to present at a writing conference. We've both been presenters at conferences. I've done a couple of sci-fi cons, but Scott's probably presented at a million other things, so we're going to hand it over to Scott to start the podcast.
Except for writing conferences.
Except for writing conferences?
But there's a couple of universal things. Do we want to start with how do you become a speaker at a conference?
I think that's a great place to start.
Okay.
Because we kind of got there in different ways.
Yes, we did. Since I'm yabbering, I'll go ahead and start. Okay, for me, most of my early times to become a speaker at a conference where I submitted a program proposal with myself as a speaker or as a panelist or something. And it was something much like a submission for a short story or novel. People judge it, they decide if they want to go forward with it, and if so, then you're put on the conference. For many of the larger conferences, unless you are the keynote, this is how you're going to get onto the program. There's going to be a proposal, and if they think you've got the goods, or you have an interesting thing to say, then they'll invite you in. So that's how a lot of conferences work, but not all of them.
What would you say the typical acceptance rate is on those?
Well, it depends. I've been with some where the acceptance rate is 100%, and so the quality is as you expect with that type of acceptance. Then there's others where the acceptance rate was something like 50. And then there are some interesting ones that certain organizations get a couple of guaranteed spots, but those are the people who put forward those proposals, not the speaker themselves, and then there's an open call. So, there's large mixes, and places do things differently in some. Some have agreements with other organizations to have certain speakers. Others, it's all submission. And then others, it's all invite, which is, I think, something closer to maybe your experience.
Writing conferences, possibly. I've sat in on panels at science fiction conventions where it seems like most sci-fi conventions will have some panels on writing, because a lot of fans like to write, might not have tried writing before, so you'll see a lot of intro classes. So really, what I've done in the past is just found conventions in my area and contacted the organizers of the event and said, hey, I'm a local writer, here's my credentials, I'd like to sit on some panels if you have any openings. There's also the option of coming up with your own presentation, saying I'd like to present this and get on the schedule.
Okay.
What I did with mine was I just sat in on already scheduled ones, so I was just at the table, helping answer questions. I didn't come up with my own presentations because I'm probably not ready to do that quite yet.
But in those cases, the conference planning committee were actively looking for certain things, right?
Right.
It wasn't an open call.
Right.
You took a shortcut with someone you met at another conference.
Yeah.
See last episode.
For sure.
But usually for something of that type, it was usually invite only.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's lots of different ways. If there's one in particular that you're looking for, you need to look at their qualifications, and if they have a proposal format, follow that. Again, follow that, just like submissions for a short story, novel, whatever. If you don't follow the submission guidelines, it's going to get thrown out right away, usually. Right. And that's for any type of conference or convention that I've been involved in. Others are invite only, and so it's not what you know, it's not even who you know, it's who knows you. So, and those only come from your networking with people and what you've done. So, rub elbows at conferences and write good books. Insert plug for website here.
How do you prepare for a panel or a presentation?
Okay, so after you've been selected. Okay. Actually, for me, panels and solo presentations are two very different beasts.
They are.
Yes. We'll start with panels, and then you and I can bounce some ideas. But for me, a panel, you don't know usually how long the other people are going to be talking and what points they're going to bring up. I've been with very few panels where there's actually some negotiation beforehand, who's talking about what. So in those, usually the guidelines that I'm familiar with are, you've got 5 minutes, then we'll do Q&A.
Yeah.
But rarely does it sort of sticks to that. So have your 5 minutes rehearsed, timed. Don't go long. Respect the other panelists. Even if the person ahead of you took 20 and you don't feel like you should take 20.
That was the feel I got. It was, each panelist had a couple of minutes to kind of introduce themselves to the audience, and then it was mostly Q&A on a specific topic.
Yeah.
And then, the A part, A meaning answer, I suppose.
There you go.
It kind of varied based on the moderator. Some of them they had is, like, there were 4 people on a panel, we all answered the same question. Some of them were more like, they'd pick one of us and have one of us answer, or one of us would volunteer to answer. It just kind of, it varied.
Yeah. And usually a panel discussion like that, you are there because you have a bunch of knowledge, not because you have a canned presentation.
Right.
I think that introductory access to a certain idea or a certain theme is why there's a panel. So that way there's a lot of points of view. Don't be afraid to disagree with someone else. Just do it respectfully. Unless everyone in the room is on the same joke, you don't want to call the other person a nitwit unless everyone knows it's just a joke.
Right.
So yeah, panels are a slightly different beast than an actual solo type of presentation.
In writing, I think panels are often going to be a little more general, a little more introductory, whereas solo presentation might be more detailed or instructional.
Yeah, I think a solo you could get a lot more nuanced.
Yeah.
It's also going to be one by nature a little one-sided. So yeah, panels are something you can put your best foot forward because you're only up talking for a little bit.
True.
So, and you don't have to talk the whole time.
Right.
You also don't want to hide behind people. You want to show yourself as an equal to the panelists. And then here's one thing: if you are on a panel, be aware that sometimes the moderator is going to take over the panel. I've seen it where there's a panel with 2 highly successful self-published authors. One of the librarians who created a system to get self-published authors into libraries through ebooks without going through major publishers or third parties. And then one of the major book reviewer newsletters for all types of books, not just ebooks or self-published books. And the person who talked the most was the moderator. You had this wealth of knowledge, and the person who talked the most was the moderator. You might have that in a panel. Just saying, be professional about it. Let the audience complain about it for you. So yeah.
As far as presentations, you got to do a lot more prep work for that.
Yes. So, and one thing to also build on, part of my day job for 10 years was to do training and presentations and so on. So that it was a daily part of my life, even if it was just for a small group of people who I knew and I could take shortcuts with. We had common language. But for every time you do a presentation, one, find out what is really expected of you from the person sponsoring the program, whether it's the conference or convention staff. If you had another group bringing you forward as the presenter, ask, what is it that you are expecting me to talk about? Because that's what they're going to be advertising. And so if they're advertising that you're going to go up there and talk about genre fiction in the 1950s, and you talk about your summer vacation, you're not going to be invited back because you went off script, even though you didn't know what the script was. So find out what the actual topic, genre, length, what is the expectation of you as a presenter. Next thing is, what equipment are you going to have? Are they providing slideshows? Are they expecting slideshows? Or are they expecting you to just be up at the podium and talk?
Are they expecting printed handouts?
Yes, all of that stuff. Will you have someone assisting you? Do you have to have whatever handout material available a week before the convention or conference? Are you going to be recorded? Do you have to give consent to be recorded? Are they just going to assume that you have given consent? Travel. If you're being brought in, if you're lucky enough to be a spotlighted person, who's arranging travel, who's paying for it. And it's not a question of you should always expect them to pay for it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying make it clear before the event who's paying for any of this.
Who's paying for what? Maybe it's a touchy subject, speaking fees.
Well, it is a touchy subject, but it really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a whole other episode that we can talk about, speaking fees. Let's table that for another time. So you have all... And I'm not saying this to try to promote mercenary tactics. It's to protect you and the conference and convention that you're speaking at. Having all this stuff laid out clearly and plainly and understood prevents bad feelings and might get you invited back again because you're doing business, right?
Right.
And you're doing it in a business-like manner, and you're making sure all the expectations are known and met on both sides. It's a good thing. I may be speaking in a little bluntly here. You can be a little bit sweeter when you're actually talking to people. But have that clear. How long you're supposed to talk. Are they expecting a Q&A? What's on right after you? That's a big one for me. It's like if I know I'm talking right before lunch, I know I'm going to see a lot of people checking their watches, pulling out their phones to check the time. I might hear some gurgling from the front row.
Yeah. And also, as a speaker in that situation, you're going to want to probably eat before you speak so you don't get hungry halfway through your talk.
Well, it depends on your body.
Yeah.
You may be going, I'm not eating, because some people, when they
too many butterflies,
they get too many butterflies, and if on a full stomach, they're fighting nausea the whole time. Other people, you're right. It's like if I have an empty stomach that close to lunch, I'm going to faint.
Yeah.
So know your body, like we're talking about the other one. Know your body. Take care of yourself. But yeah, there's many people who get their first speaking gig and say, I'll just breeze in, 5 minutes before, yap, sell my book at the door. No. Because you do that once, it's going to be a long time before you're invited again, unless you are one of the super spectacularly rare people on the earth who may not actually be human.
So you're saying you should prepare?
Yes. Okay, and I'm not even talking about the speech yet. This is all the logistics around you getting there.
Yeah.
But that is important because, again, earlier on in our series, we've talked about business of writing. You've got to take it seriously. If you're going to do this and be, even as a part-time side gig, be a professional about it, right? And if you get all this stuff taken care of ahead of time in a business-like, nice manner, don't be super demanding. Just say, hey, I want the best for both of us. That's why I'm asking these many questions, because I want it to be a success for both. That's what you need to do. So that's why I've been able to keep presenting. Even though it's not in writing conferences, I've been presenting in library conferences for over 20 years. Not so much now because of my job change, but still. So what do you think, Jason? Have I just scared half of our audience from doing solo presentations?
I hope not.
Okay.
I'll touch a little bit on being prepared.
Okay.
When I sat on these panels, I knew which panels I was going to be on.
Okay.
And I made sure I brought a gigantic page of scribbled things that I'm going to say. So if I'm asked this question, I don't stutter. I know how to answer it. And I was prepared, and I think I did okay. First, I've only done it a couple times. To turn that around from the other side, at my day job, I had to give just a 10-minute talk. I'm a sysadmin. I just needed to talk about my servers for 10 minutes. I said, I don't need to prepare for this. I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's my day job. I'll just get up and talk. You can imagine what happened. I got up, and it was only like 8 people or something. It wasn't even a big deal. I got up, and I think I just stood there going, for about 10 minutes and sat down. So even if you think you're going to be comfortable, you have to be prepared for these things.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about what to expect for travel and whatnot. The conventions I did, since I asked to be on the panels and was accepted to be on the panels, I did do it pro bono just to market myself. Sometimes I think that's going to be pretty common with unknown writers. You just have to view it as part of your promotion and just try to volunteer to do some panels just for practice. And usually you can put up a table and try to sell some books.
Yeah, but double check that.
Yeah.
Don't go in expecting or assuming anything.
Right.
And, and we probably should have led the podcast with this. This goes for when you're doing a book talk, too.
Oh, yeah.
All of these things that we're talking about for conferences, presenting at conferences, you got to think about this stuff when you're doing a book talk, too. When I was doing mine, even though they were small local places, because I wrote a book about small place, I got the audiences I expected, but I still had to work out, what time do I need to be there? Do I need to be there early for sound checks? Am I selling my books? Is it okay? Do you expect me to? If I do, are you expecting a kickback? Some places do. They'll say, you can sell your books, but we expect 2%.
Wow.
And it really depends,
Yeah.
Or it's like, yes, you can, but you got to take care of all the sales tax. And in this state, in this place, it's this percent. Okay. So that's another thing. Sometimes you selling your own books at a place, you don't want to do it because you've got to do all the tax stuff. If there's another bookstore that can do that for you, even better. But we can talk more about book talks another time, too, after we get someone who's done a lot more than we have. But still, it's knowing what's going on. And we've spent, almost a whole thing talking about all the stuff around your actual presentation. We haven't talked about actually giving the presentation yet. All right, so Jason talked about this earlier, too, about, it's stuff you do every day, but yet when you go up to speak in front of an audience, something clicks, and it's unfortunately an off switch.
Often, yes, most of the time.
So when you are asked to present, do yourself a favor, do the audience a favor, practice the thing. Now, I'm not saying write it down and have a script and read the script verbatim, because then you'll sound like, and then I went to the store to get a stick of butt flip page tur. And those might not be the actual words, but it'll sound like that. It'll sound like you're reading a grocery list. So spend some time, get your bullet notes or whatever works for you. And if you've never done this before, it'll take you some time to find the method that works for you. For me, it's practice, 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 and then I don't need notes at all.
That's good advice.
Other people, they need 1 3x5 card. That's all they need.
Yeah, I need bullet points.
Yeah. And, find what works for you, but practice the darn thing.
And watch other ones.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not at a convention, if you don't have access to a convention to watch other writers talk, watch some on YouTube. There's plenty out there. Watch Brandon Sanderson's lectures. Those are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just watch and practice and practice.
Yeah. And one thing to think about is I'll start practicing before I have my whole thing figured out. Because as I'm talking, I'll hit a point and I go, what would go really good here? This point. And so I stop, rewrite, and then it helps with having an actual flow instead of just reading an outline. And for me, it really does. I'll have a really brief idea, and I'll start talking, and I'll follow that. It's like, oh, no, I need to have that part moved up, so that way I can explain this other part. I write that way, too. So I do my speeches like I write. I pants it, my first drafts. If you're an outliner by choice for writing, that might be how you do your speaking, too. You have your full outline, and you just follow it. And for me, most of the time, unless I have a really large audience, I'll take questions in between and I'll ditch my outline at will. Other people can't do that. That's fine. That's not a presentation style that works for them. You've got to work that out for yourself.
That's a good idea. Also, because if you don't have a lot of questions, then you can go back to what you have planned.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to just say, okay, I'll talk for 15 minutes, and then have 15 minutes of questions, and have no questions, and then what do you do?
Well, that happened to me. I had half an hour. I had my usual, for that, I'd have 10 minutes prepared. Mm-hmm. And I expected a ton of questions, and it was a room of crickets.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had to just make up,
Did you sing?
No. I said, well, okay, seeing there's no questions, I'm going to go a little bit deeper on this point. I didn't have any slides for it, but I was able to pull something out, and I had gotten far enough in that any jitters were gone. Mm-hmm. But still, on the other hand, I've sat through one, and some guy was reading a script, and he's running half an hour late, and he wouldn't leave the room. Oh. And there was another session in the back. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't. On a closing note, I want to talk about jitters for a second.
Yeah.
We all have our ways of calming the jitters. Mm-hmm. I'm a coffee addict, but I had to force myself to not drink so much coffee on days I was presenting because you get too much, you get too jittery.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and how you get through it is different, and when it hits is different.
yeah.
For my jitters hit the day before, and I am at my worst the day before. The morning of, I'm fine, but the day before, I question if I'm going or not. It's that bad.
Wow, mine come when I'm driving. And I think because I worry about parking, I worry about getting there, construction, or whatever. So it's always once I get in the car. I'm fine until then. It's like, oh no, I'm in the car. What if I'm late?
Yeah. You see, that's one of those things where earlier we talked about logistics. I'm probably already been on site for an hour.
Oh yeah. If you're presenting, get there an hour early because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. There's been a time where I was at a conference that I was helping run. A presenter wasn't there. And so the other one was there. The one who was supposed to go after us said, could you go ahead? And I said, why, sure. And we were all so thankful. And the people who were in the audience, it was one of those single track type of days.
So that was okay.
Yeah, everyone was all in the same room. So the other person had some traffic things. They can't be here right now, so we're going to go ahead and switch. And everyone said, hey, great, we're still going to get everything we paid for.
Oh, well, yeah, that's okay.
So we could probably talk for days on conferences, but we won't.
We do want to say, if you're a writer, if you can get on some panels, give it a try. What's the worst that'll happen? Well, let's not answer that question.
Well, it's like right there, dead silence.
Dead silence.
Maybe if there's enough interest, we could talk about planning a conference or convention.
Yeah, maybe sometime.
That's a whole ugly beast right there.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I think we'll close this one out. Thanks for listening. Checking us out on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com. And see you next time.
See ya.